I get a cut? I think I'm top five. Top five.
Top five side ones, track ones.
All right, hello and welcome back to another edition of Top 5. I'm Kenton McDonald,
I'm Ian Howe.
and today we have a very special guest,
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Keith.
Keith Testerman.
Yeah.
Do you want the grandiose? Should
You
we,
do-
we
you
tell
do
you how I
whatever.
feel about you?
Sure. Yeah. Whatever
Yeah.
you guys like.
Punk
The
rock,
boss.
the boss, punk rock boss,
legend.
mayor,
The mayor, the professor,
the professor to some.
Yeah.
owner and operator of Blackwater Records and Blackwater Bar, one of a few, but
Yeah. Among other things.
Yeah, so watch out.
And,
Keep your eyes out for the next Blackwater opening near you.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I
No.
don't think I know a single person that plays in as many bands that I like as this guy.
Oh, thanks.
So,
It's because.
so happy to have
Yeah.
you today.
Thanks.
Yeah, as far as I mean, I know a lot of people that play in a lot of bands, but as far as quality is concerned, I mean, you play in some quality bands, Keith.
That's because you don't know about the non-quality ones. So. Well.
Do you want to talk about
No,
that?
it's cool.
Okay,
Well,
okay.
that's gonna stay a secret. Yeah.
Top 5 non-quality.
Yeah.
Top 5 secret Keith bands.
Ooh, so many of them. Yeah.
Well, why don't you tell us what we're going to be talking about today?
Top 5 live sets.
Live sets, very good.
Yeah.
One band, one place, one time, and you had to be there.
Yes. No poser shit.
No YouTube videos.
Well, when you guys brought this criteria to me, it didn't cross my mind to think back to my favorite shows I wasn't at.
Right.
But now maybe afterwards I'll think about that. What if I was at a show I wasn't at?
Yeah, I mean that happens to me all the time actually. Like it's like, was I actually at that show?
Or do I just have the flyer hanging in my living room?
Totally, yeah.
I've watched enough Sam Hain footage from the 80s to really know every move that was done on stage.
Yeah.
So, Keith, do you want to start right in with your number 5?
Yeah, my number 5 would probably be Cholera in Brazil, around 2003, 2004. Yeah, so that was, I want to say the first time I went down there, and I went down there to try to establish some contact with some of the bands and the labels to do some reissues of older bands. And I had some friends down there that I was staying with, and they ended up, they're like, you want to go see Cholera? And I don't know, there was probably like 10 other bands that played that show. And I was like, yeah, sure. Not realizing it was going to be like an hour bus trip through Sao Paulo, like going through some crazy ass parts of town. And then, yeah, eventually like stumbling on this, like a open air warehouse type thing where there's, probably like 1,000 kids.
Damn.
Yeah, it was nuts. It was like, it almost looked like a hangar type thing, and also, I don't know, like being my first experience in Brazil, not having any idea like what it's like or anything. And
It's a super overwhelming city. It's the third largest in the world.
at the time it was. I think it's probably like not even top 5 at this point.
We'll talk about it anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I went down there, when I was 20 or 21, and that was like my first trip out of the country. And I remember going to some sort of peak or mountaintop and just looking at the cityscape, and it looked like it just was turning with the earth, like rotating in
it's
every direction.
nuts.
It's massive.
Yeah, and I was staying like right in the heart of the city. Yeah, which actually the whole trip started off kind of crazy. I actually got kicked off a plane in Miami, was stuck there for a few days. First, only time, probably last time I'll ever go to Miami. Like, no, I don't really ever have a reason to go down
Miami's cool, man.
there. I would love to go there, but I don't really have any reason to, and I don't really take vacation. So, and then I got my wallet stolen on the plane, which was totally fucked. So I got lucky that there were some cool people taking care of me at the time, but Yeah. Oh yeah. Back to the set, right? So hour-long bus ride.
The trip's part of the set.
The trip's part of the set. Yeah, the whole experience was like just kind of surreal, you know. Like even walking around the city, and it's like all of a sudden it's like, or it's like sunny out, and then all of a sudden it's like torrential downpour, and 10 minutes later it's sunny again, and that's kind of what was happening this whole trip down there. And then, you know, get to this giant warehouse with all these punks, like crazy amount of punks, like going nuts, and like the stage, it looked like I built the stage. It was like super janky and shitty, probably like 8 feet tall. They're all playing on like the worst equipment you can think of, like you know, typical like South American or like Central American tours.
That's how you get the tone, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you've ever done tours like that, most of the time the gear is, you know, it's pretty brutal, but like, you know, and because it was a torrential downpour and it's open air, there's like water everywhere. So there's kids like running across like the pit and like sliding on their stomachs, and like,
Oh my god.
it's like slip and slide everywhere while these bands are playing. And then Cholera plays, which was amazing. They probably played for an hour. I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. And then they start talking, and the guys I was with, I'm like, what are they saying? And like, they're saying, that was our sound check. Now we're really going to play. and then they played for like another hour, and it was like between like watching all the kids like going crazy, and then the band, like this like old like legendary band playing on this crappy equipment on the stage, but still like destroying everything. It was like, it's pretty intense, you know.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like a perfect storm, really. I mean, all of the things that got you to that point, the weather, and also just, you know, the fact that they could still bring it is always such a memorable thing, especially when you see like older bands that you love. I don't feel like people typically have high expectations. So were you going into it expecting it?
I had no idea. I mean, I knew I liked the band a lot, but I had no idea what the show space was going to be like. I had no idea what they were going to be like. I mean, they were super cool dudes. Like, I mean, it's like one of those things where you get to see this entire, like, you know, you don't think about it very often, but you realize like, oh, every city has this stuff going on. Like and it's always like slightly different, you know, like there's like a whole entire punk culture there that you don't even think about, but is like super dialed in and super like, I don't know. It was a really cool community thing to watch.
And
like,
were they a band that never stopped playing?
They never stopped playing.
Okay.
And actually the record they did that when I was down there, like has some of like my favorite Cholera songs now. But
cool.
Yeah. And unfortunately that's some stuff that I'll probably never be able to release. Like the guitar player owned all the rights and passed away like not too long after that trip. So I have no idea what's up with that. Hopefully someday somebody represses all that stuff, but yeah.
But it's not going to be you.
It's not going to be me. I mean, it could be, but I don't think so. Like, I don't have as good a relationship with those guys as I would have liked.
So the trip was a failure.
No, the trip was great. No.
Okay.
I ended up getting a few rights to some like pretty classic things, but have yet to do it because I'm so busy, and unfortunately, like maybe next year.
Being mayor is a full-time job.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's on my list of things to do that I really need to start doing. So, yeah.
Great.
Who's next?
Cool. Awesome pick. I'll be next. My pick, compared to that, sounds like a small deal.
I know. As Keith was talking, I'm like, damn.
That's a really
Son of a bitch.
like, people fucking water sliding on the floor and
have I
1,000 people there at a punk show. Holy shit!
And they're super punk. Like they're like
Yeah.
exactly what you'd expect like Brazilian street punky kids to look like. They're yeah.
I've never been to South America.
Oh. Okay.
And so obviously I've never been to a punk show in South America.
Okay. Well.
But definitely on the bucket list.
Yeah.
Well, so I had a really hard time with this whole concept. The only way I can think to organize my list is going retro in reverse order. Like
Okay. Yeah.
most recent.
The most recent to the oldest. And so the most recent show on my list is from 2015. It was at Blackwater,
Sweet.
your establishment,
Sweet.
and it
Was that the bar then, or was
it
that
was the bar then
warehouse?
by
Okay.
2015.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that. I was gonna ask you what year it switched. That was like 2014.
I think we're 7 years at the bar right now. So whatever,
So
7 minus 20.
So 14. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
But
math.
it just hit me at just the right time. It's Sure Mag.
Oh, yeah. Wait, so which time? The first time?
The first time.
Yeah, that was great.
The first time they
Yeah.
played there. And I had had been in Spain and had just found out about them and obsessing over the first 7-inch.
I think they only had a 7-inch at the time.
The second 7-inch was
Or is just coming out for
was
that
just
tour or
coming
something.
out. So they had a total of 8 songs.
yeah.
And I knew every song so well and was like just so excited to see it. And then it happened and I saw it. And it was fucking thrilling and they delivered it perfectly. Still one of my favorite bands to see. But this first time with just those 8 songs with all the build up for me, it fucking hit me. And it was awesome seeing them there.
Yeah, I like that one. Like, I didn't really have any expectations. Like, I had heard some people that worked there were playing, like, would play the 7-inch sometimes. I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. But I had no idea, like, what to expect and was definitely impressed. Like, they were awesome. Super cool people. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I was super late to that party. I think by the second or third time they came around, that's when I was aware of them. And it had been like in every establishment that I was around, such as like Pizza Go-Go or where my friends
Sure.
worked, it was constantly playing over the speakers.
And now you go to like the fucking like food cart pod near my house and they're
Oh,
playing
yeah,
there,
totally.
you know. It's like,
Yeah, and they were like, and then it was like, as soon as I heard of them, they were like playing like the Paps Fest waterfront
yeah.
thing, It was,
They ended up playing after the, I think it was this last tour. They ended up playing like a secret after show at the bar again.
and I was there. That was amazing also.
That was after that Mississippi show, right? Or on that same tour?
one of the Mrs.
Oh yeah, I guess they
don't
probably
know.
played
Yeah.
there a bunch. Yeah.
Yeah, they've played Portland 5-6
Right.
times by now, but yeah, that first time it was like
Good.
I was just so for every song like just feeling it inside of me like, oh, now it's this one. Now it's this one.
I don't even remember who else played with them, honestly.
Cool Heads.
Oh, cool. Okay.
I-
that makes sense. Yeah.
Wait, I want to say Rick and the Pigs.
Okay. Yeah, that
Um,
also makes sense.
could be wrong about that. I don't.
But it's they just
It was-
overshadowed everything.
we're talking
yeah.
sense here.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we're
No, I'm
talking
just
about
you got to
Yeah,
perspective.
paint
you
the
know?
picture. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they're this good that you don't remember the other bands, then that's pretty good.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck the Cool Heads, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's. I mean, I still love Shermack, but that moment for me was a special moment.
See, I'm on the same page with you as far as the sets that I'm going to talk about as well. A lot of them are just bands that I was so ready to see. Like, I couldn't be more up on the shit, had all the records, wanted so badly to see them, and then I did. So that sounds like,
It's the best time to see a band.
and that rarely ever happens to me anymore. It will happen. It happens occasionally, but when I was younger, that was definitely like something I was more hip to, I guess, finger on the pulse. But
Where no matter what they play, you're excited to hear that song.
I used to have like all my favorite records by bands that I loved before they were even reviewed, in
sure.
any magazine and shit at the time, when I was younger. So I was always super pumped when something that I like had been into for a while before the rest of everyone caught on to it. Not because I was like early to it, but because I've been telling all my friends, like, you have to check this band out. And like people are like, oh yeah, sure, I'll check that out. And then they finally come to town and it just fucking blows doors.
Yeah. A lot of my honorable mentions would be like me as a teenager, kind of like, I know all this fucking band's records. I'm so stoked to see them, and you go see them, you're like, holy shit. but unfortunately, there's only 5. So. But I will say, like, I was talking to Shane earlier about some of those shows that he somehow was at the same shows as me, probably because, Portland and Salem are so close. But like going to La Luna in like the mid to late 90s, like seeing that's like Subhumans or GBH or like those bands when you're like a teenager for the first time, especially back then, because they weren't actually that old. Like, like to put things into perspective, they would have probably been like less than 20 years a band, whereas like, I don't know, some of the bands that like I'm playing with now have been touring for 20 years, which
Yeah, first time I saw the Subhumans, they'd been a band for about 20 or 22 years or something at that point. So
yeah, I think Shane was saying it was like 97, 98. The show that we were talking about was like, yeah. And that same year it was like, I think GBH also played through, and that's the first time I ever saw Slayer Hippie play drums, because he played drums on a song, like on a Zero Boys cover with them, which
Oh, damn.
was pretty amazing, especially when the song was over and they were trying to get him to get away from the set, and he just kept like playing. Being like a teenager watching this stuff happen is like pretty funny. Like, yeah.
What you got, number 5?
my number 5 is The Vicious from when I saw them in 2007. I was fortunate enough to catch all 3 of their shows. The first one was at the Demug. Was actually a pretty great basement for shows. And that one was just wild. It was packed. It was a party. Our friends lived there. It just felt like a secondary home. So just felt so cool to be there. And for me, the one that I'm most stoked about and most memorable to me is the next night when they played at the No, because I was underage, but I would stop at nothing to get in. And I went around and I was hanging out and I was trying to find a way in. I think Scott Moore was working the door something, or maybe he was working merch for The Vicious. I think that's what it was.
That would make sense, yeah. Because
I eventually convinced Nate to lend me his ID, because he was of age and had big sideburns at the time and a bunch of long hair. And I had long hair and sideburns, and that was about as much as I needed, and ended up getting in. And all of my friends who were underage were outside at the door, so I felt extra privileged to have gotten in. And then I walked in, and Scott just like gave me a big grin. He's like, "You made it in." I'm like, "I did."
That's a funny guy. I celebrated my 21st birthday at the No.
Oh yeah,
even though I had been going and playing there for years.
Yeah. That was always
Kevin
fun.
Adams buying me a bunch of shots.
Yeah.
So that was.
Yeah, so I would have been 19 years old at that show. I was super pumped. And they're great. And then they, and that was one of those bands that I was super stoked to see. Had all the records. Well, not really, actually. I'd heard all the records. I still don't own the first 12-inch they put out. I tried to get it, but I love those songs. And was just so stoked to see them. And I took every opportunity I had to get in to see him, and then they ended up playing a set over at KBOO the next night. So I caught him all 3 nights, and that's the only tour they ever did here. So I feel very fortunate to have at least got him 3 times.
I missed them. I was on tour when that happened.
Ooh,
And that was 1 year before I moved here.
Yeah,
Maybe 2.
I can't.
No,
even,
1.
Yeah, you can't win them all, right?
Lucky you, Ken.
Yeah.
I know. That's it had to be on the 5 for me, because I think that was like just sheer emotion of like, I am ready to see this band. They are coming. I am ready. And having the luxury of them being released on Yannick's label and him booking the tour and being able to set up, 2 proper shows, and, also being fortunate enough to be able to get invited or go to the KBOO show as well. So that was awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Keith, what do you got?
What do I
Number
got?
4.
Oh, shit, I gotta look this one up. Yeah.
Google.com.
Google.
Siri, what was my favorite show?
I mean, part of the this whole like show thing kind of made me think about like why why you go to shows anyways, or like what's the point of a lot of it. Like I know everyone's got their different reasons. Like for me, mainly like I mean, I think the bands are like the good part of it, but I think it's always kind of secondary to like meeting, like a good excuse to like hang out with your friends and like do stuff and like kind of let off steam and all this stuff. So
Yeah, the music can almost seem secondary at times.
yeah, so like the hardest part for this, like I'd say like out of the 20 best shows and narrowing that down to 10 and then trying to get that down to fives, like pretty much eliminating a lot of the house shows and stuff, which I mean, honestly are probably some of my best experiences at shows, or like, you know, smaller venues or like a ton of local shows. Like I can't even think of how many thousands of shows seen or played or whatever.
I was thinking about that today. I was like, okay, I have probably seen definitely hundreds of shows, which means probably thousands.
Yeah.
Or well over 1,000 sets. And Keith has been doing this for how much longer and how much more extensively than me? Like,
I mean, it's
definitely you've seen thousands of sets.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. Like I've played thousands
in
of
hundreds of
shows.
cities.
Yes, and a lot of that becomes like really monotonous and like, you know, if you've done any amount of touring, it's like, and you don't think about it, eventually everything kind of feels like you're doing the same thing over and over again. Especially if you don't think about like, why am I doing this? It's like, why do you tour? You tour to meet people and, you know, try to deal with the daily grind of all the bullshit that is, you know, every fucking day life.
Totally. Also, I mean, specifically when we're talking about shows, is kind of more specific to punk. Like there is a community element behind it. Like I have met so many friends from abroad who have hosted me, and I've hosted them, just because we ran into each other at a show and were introduced, or they're passing through. There is like a community element, which I don't think is as prevalent in other, you know, music or genres.
Subcultures.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like this one was my number 4, I'm going to say was Killing Joke at the Wonder Ballroom. And that was the first time I'd seen them. And maybe not the best like experience leading up to the show, because I'd seen them a few other times. Like saw them in Seattle, went up to Seattle with like a bunch of really good friends, had a really great time. Saw the show. It was like some 35th anniversary thing, so they played like a whole catalog of stuff, which was amazing. But the show wasn't nearly as good as the Wonder Ballroom show. Same with the one that when they played at Star on the last tour. It's good, but not nearly the same. Like the Wonder Ballroom show was like, I mean, it's no question. It was like one of the top 5 sets I've ever seen. Like it was bouncing around like probably top 1, 2, or 3, depending on the mood, you know?
Sure.
And mostly because the sound was good. It's across the street from the record store, so there was like a convenience factor there. But
that's a great factor.
Also, like I hadn't seen him before, and the album they did before, like this was on the Absolute Descent tour. So the album they did before was like the Hosanna's record, was one of this record that I've been like killing for since it came out. Like I probably played it way too many times. Like Warcry had been using some of those songs as our like hype music while we'd set up on tour in like Japan or like other places. Anytime we had the opportunity, we'd be like, let's give them this CD with this song on it so we can get all pumped before we played. And then watching this band just like play and be in their own world, and you can kind of like have this experience with them where they're just like, the singer was, his eyes were so intense, like everything was like exactly how you'd want it to be. Like you could just feel the sound and get into it, you know? It's just an experience. That and that shows probably, probably don't put it higher on this one because it doesn't necessarily have the same like community. Like it is at a bigger venue, so like the community aspect of a show that I would at this moment in time would probably prefer wasn't necessarily there. I mean, again, it's across the street from the record store, so that you're still hanging out with your friends and get to do stuff before and after. But
And it's still Killing Joke. I mean, maybe.
And there still is a community in that where it's just narrowed. You got to
Yeah.
filter through a lot of people, but there's some of my favorite shows I've gone to have been like bigger shows, and they're like, oh, there's one of my people. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah. I mean, that was like one of the things I was debating was like, oh, should I throw an Iron Maiden or something? But it's like that's at a giant arena, and you're sitting down like you were talking about, like can you actually put a show like a set if you're just like sitting down watching a band? It's not the same. But if you're the right level of intoxicated and in a good mood and you're with people that are just like with you and you're just screaming lyrics to like Iron Maiden or Kiss or Judas Priest or whatever you want, like that's a pretty fucking good show.
totally
But-
feeding off of the energy,
Yeah.
and hype from one another.
But yeah, I would say that Killing Joke set was above and beyond any of the other times I'd ever seen him, and like definitely an experience.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Well, that's a pretty good segue into my number 4, which is Iron Maiden.
Oh, sweet.
And I was standing up, and I got to the White River Amphitheater,
Oh, I was at that show.
2012.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they toured with Alice Cooper for half the tour and Coheed and Cambria for half the
that
tour.
was a bummer. Yeah.
And we didn't get the Cooper part, but we pulled up I walked up right after Coheed and Cambria played, who I did actually like in high school.
Wait,
but
did we go together? We didn't go together.
no.
Okay.
Oh wait, were you in the van with Mikkel and?
No.
Okay.
I went with Mira and no. I can't even remember.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
Sounds
Yeah.
like a memorable show.
Sounds like a memorable trip up to Tacoma or whatever.
the
that
White
is.
River Amphitheater.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, and so pull up. The opening band was just finishing Iron, like it's like the starting Iron Maiden music, and I'm like running
yeah.
through. I was with Amy Kay, and Dusty, and Mikkel, and we're just like charging through and just run. We had what's it called right up front, the
Oh, the
Barricade?
pit or whatever.
pit. The
Yeah.
pit.
Yeah,
Call it
I-
the pit.
I wish I would have been able. Wait, you were actually in the pit.
I was in the pit.
Oh, that's why it was better
So
for
we
you.
run straight up and we just go as far as we can and get within like less than 10 people to the stage.
Whoa.
And Iron Maiden starts and I look around and there's Frank and there's like,
Oh, yeah.
and then it's like I'm just like surrounded by like
Yeah.
Portland people, all punks, and like Iron Maiden's playing, and then just deliver, I think, the best set I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, they are just so fucking good live, and
Yeah.
bring so much energy. And I was surrounded by friends, and I caught the fucking drumstick.
Oh, damn. That's
Uh,
great. Oh, yeah. I did hear about this shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was the Seventh Son of a Seventh Son tour, but they play all the hits like that's. But even the fact that it was mostly, almost all old material, it's fucking awesome, and they bring it. It's they all the stage props and everything. That's fun and all, but them as a band, I would.
Yeah, I think
It's
I like that.
amazing.
That was the first time I'd ever seen him because I don't know why,
It's
but
the only time I've ever seen them.
I was so far away, like literally, like you could barely make out who the people were, which
Yeah.
it was still good, but there was a point when the people I was with were like, let's fucking rush the pit, and some of them actually, I think Mira actually made it up there,
Okay.
but I'm not about to get kicked out of a amphitheater in the middle of nowhere in Washington, so. And I was comfortable on the lawn,
Watching the screen.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the show that I saw him this last tour at the Rose Garden was amazing. Like I feel
Yeah.
like they have to be like the best live band.
And I think that that's the only way to see a band is up close. You have to be able to like see them sweating. You have to feel like you're part of the show.
Yeah,
If at any point in a concert you're even tempted to look at a screen to get a better view of
Totally.
the stage,
yeah,
it's not even worth being there. Like
yeah. I mean, that's the thing with like I was saying, like with like Maiden or Kiss or Judas Priest or whatever other like arena shows. It's like you could just as easily be sitting or like hanging out at a house party with your friends, like
right.
blasting the music turned up. I mean, it's definitely a little bit better.
It's an experience.
Yeah.
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 especially driving up to.
Oh yeah,
halfway to Seattle
I remember the tailgate part of that. The show you're talking about being pretty cool, and then after I think everyone got like a hotel like pretty close by. Like,
Yeah, the journey kind of makes it extra special.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like
that's the difference between listening to the.
it's the
band in
opposite
your
of the
living room.
convenient factor.
right. I mean, and
of
that
going
kind
to a
of
show.
goes hand in hand with like the whole experience of like, why are you doing like what's the good parts of the show or like experiences with your friends and like doing stuff that gets you away from the daily grind, like things definitely get monotonous when you do see thousands of shows and they're all kind of like shitty or like, it's like, oh, I guess I'm just going to go to this show, this like random show that doesn't really mean anything and not have any idea why. Then you kind of lose the appreciation for it, like.
And I think that's something we're all definitely missing now, even those shows that.
I mean, the hope is that people, like, whenever it happens, shows happen again, like, that people, like, appreciate little things more. Like, I think a lot of people are. Like, the last year and a half has been kind of crazy. Like, there's probably a lot of things that people take for granted that they definitely won't at the beginning. Maybe 6 months in, they will again, but who knows?
Right.
Like, yeah.
Well, yeah. That Iron Maiden show was something else.
Yeah.
And especially, again, just being right there for it.
There is something to being there, stoked to see people that most people are seeing from the lawn or a screen or whatever, because I hate arena shows because I never spring for the good seats. I
mean, it's a significant amount of money.
It's a lot
It was
of money.
$100.
Mine was $100, and I was in the lawn.
I paid $100. I caught it within 10 minutes of when they went on sale. I was at Pizza Go Go, and then I'm like, oh, what? I'm gonna pay $100 or even $80 to go sit down.
Well, I mean, mine was. I gotta
for
say,
another
like,
band?
for that show, it was a gift. Somebody had bought me the ticket, so it was an amazing show.
Oh, I actually spent $200 because I bought 2 tickets. One was for Mickle.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think it wasn't for Mickle at the time. I think I was trying to find a date by then.
Didn't.
Mickle's a good date.
Yeah.
Now
was
that
a
he's
great
taken,
date.
though, we don't get him as
Plan
much
B,
as we
yeah.
used to.
Yeah, his gift in return was sneaking me in to see Wasp in Munich.
Sweet.
Just for the encore, because that's all that you
yeah.
could talk security into.
It's like, now it's free. So they got 2 more songs.
Hell yeah, what a good band.
Hell yeah.
And Wasp didn't make is that your number one? Am I blowing it?
Oh, shit.
Well, cool. I'm going to get into my number 4 if you're
Please.
done on the Maiden front.
Yeah.
All right. So this one, I can't stress this enough that the number doesn't really matter that I'm at 4. It could be anywhere. But this moment was very, very important to me. And this is something that I don't think I've really talked about openly, especially with like a lot of the people who are in the band who have become friends of mine over the years. But the band Ceremony,
Oh yeah, you really like that band.
I think they're great. And when they played a show here in 2005, it was their first little tour, and they played at the Food Hole, and only 5 people showed up to see 3 touring bands.
Damn.
So
Who were they touring with?
I actually don't remember off the top of my head a couple youth crew bands or whatever. And but 3 of those 5 people were my friends, and they came back with that 7-inch. And at that time, I wasn't really as receptive to modern hardcore bands of that genre. But when I heard it like, I think a lot of it had to do with my friend Logan Shattuck, who was there, who brought home the record, and we'd all hang out at his house. And every time he'd put that record on, you just hear the first notes of Cursed off the Ruined EP, and the next thing you know, he'd just be throwing a chair at you and like moshing through his bedroom at you, and just I don't know, like, so I've always associated it with just going apeshit. And I'd never seen them, and I really wanted to. And they were talking trash on Portland, how it was like they had the worst show there, and some like, internet
Message board.
No, it was some sort of write-up or something where like, what's the funniest thing that's happening on tour? It's like, well, nothing really funny, but I can tell you about the worst show we've had or something like that. But anyhow, I saw them few months later, at that point, I had a dubbed copy because I couldn't get a copy of the 7-inch because it was out of print. So I had a dubbed cassette tape copy that I used to listen to in my car on my 15-minute break. And I just listened to it because it was exactly 15 minutes long and go back to work. And they went to play a show up in Seattle, and it was I think it was like May 24th of 2006. This band Champion was playing their last show or something, so there were a bunch of hardcore bands up there for that weekend, but they played this show at the American Legion Hall in West Seattle. And of course, I pile all my friends into the car because I'm one of the only people that can drive because I'm, 18 years old. And we get up there and, we don't know a ton of people. They're not necessarily they're not overtly punk people. It's kind of a
straight edge scene, yeah.
Yeah, or like the youth crew hardcore scene.
Yeah.
There is a separation there, so I, didn't feel like I fit in perfectly, but I was so stoked to see them. And when they took the stage, it was fucking mayhem. It was like this hall of kids, and it's like wall to wall, like moshing back and forth. Shit just kept breaking. Like the power kept going out, and the people were getting so wild that they'd be breaking the power strips and all this shit, and they do like half the set without power and people are just singing along and like climbing on top of Ross. It was just like, I don't think I'd ever seen anything like that at the time. And because I'd already like built them up in my head I was just so excited to see them. And this is the first time, and it like did not disappoint. And they're one of the few bands that I've seen maybe the most, because from that first show, me and my friends were like in a friendly competition to see who could see them the most. They're driving down to like Sync with Cali and Sound and Fury and all these fests, and I'd be down visiting family in the Bay Area, and I'd catch a show by it. It's like
It was like a Grateful Dead type thing.
it was straight up. we were full on Deadheads.
Yeah.
No, but it was that first show was just so epic, and it was really. I don't know. I was just really, really into it. And I have nothing but fond memories of it. And it's, they've become very good friends of mine over the years, and I love them to death. And it was shortly thereafter, like I reached out to him, like, I know I can book you a better show, and I don't book shows for
Right.
people. And, they started staying with me. I booked their first handful of shows in Portland after that. And, now it's like nearly 15 years later, and I still go see them.
Yeah.
Thank God, because I couldn't deliver. I'd feel bad. But Ceremony is a terrific band. They've only gotten better. But also the point of this is that, I've seen them on every single tour for every record they've released. People are still getting into that band right now, and all they want to hear is the early shit, where it's like, all I got to hear was the early shit for the first, half dozen shows. And
Right.
like over time, I've seen it all done. They still play a fair amount of old stuff. But a couple years ago in 2016, I was down in for Sound and Fury, and they played like another non-main show. They played at some art gallery with Angel Dust, and they played a bunch of really old songs, and that was also very nostalgic for me. Like more stuff off of like Scared People and Violence and Still Nothing Moves You, and some of the stuff off of Ruined as well. But it's like, it's nice to have seen all of that over the course of my friendship with those guys. But that first time, it's still like in my head of like not just being shook or was not expecting it.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, so that's my 2 cents on Ceremony.
Was that number 4?
It's number 4.
All right, well, Keith, let's get into it. Number 3, what do you got?
My number 3 is kind of a little bit related to your Vicious one. It would be No Hope for the Kids in Copenhagen, which was this specific show was their last ever show.
Uh-huh.
And like I had seen them. I mean, I really like that band. They're great. Like
Awesome.
when they came around, they were like a very like refreshing thing. That like nobody was really playing like stuff that was that catchy or sounding like that. And ended up. I never saw them in Portland, but I did play like Hellshock. Ended up playing a couple shows with them on the East Coast. We partied with them in Philly for like one of those pointless fests. We got kind of lumped together for a few days, and then me and Hopper stayed for a few days after that and just kept hanging out with him. So we were all already like pretty good friends after that. But this last one was I want to say it's the last Warcry tour. Yeah, for sure. It's the last tour that Warcry did in Europe. And our Copenhagen show was with them, and it was their last show, and it was billed as like a kind of like a reunion last show because they had stopped playing for years. And I think they're all in or some of them are in that War All the Time band who are pretty good, but
The War Goes On.
War Goes On. War Goes On, which is pretty good. But this one was like at this place called Ungdomshuset, which it's a newer one because they used to have one back in the day that was like an old classic like squatted youth house that was amazing. Long story short, it got torn up and they ended up getting a new one, and this was like at the new one, which is a pretty awesome space to have shows. Like I can't really do it justice describing how cool it is. But we played like tons of people. I want to say there's probably 500 people at the show. And this particular like show space, because they have a couple show spaces, this one's like obviously on the bigger end and has a catwalk. And
I'm just picturing Todd on the catwalk and loving it.
yeah. I mean, we were all there. We were all like, we were bouncing back and forth from the top to the bottom. And again, the band's great. Like they're super catchy, super cool guys. Like just a good band all around. But watching a band like that I'm guessing most of the people in this scene like grew up on, and obviously they knew all the words because like you see this like 500 or so like Danish kids and punks and like going crazy for this band. And us being up on the catwalk, you realize that the crowd is louder than the band is. Like they're all singing the words to every song louder than the band is playing, and it's like get chills, like experience like this. I don't know. It's just crazy. I've had stuff like it, but this one was like by far the most intense like of those type of experiences. Watching a band play, where you're just like, I love these songs, and these guys love these songs, and
A crowd will definitely help.
Yeah, and you
make
can
a
feel
good show or make a great show amazing.
Yeah, and you could feel the energy from everyone and how excited they were, and like just an experience. And obviously, like us playing the show was completely like forgotten and secondary to like us being at this place and being able to experience this thing with all these people who most of them are our friends, like.
Yeah, and that band too, like I didn't get to see them. I think they played at maybe Below Zero or
They
something.
did, yeah.
I didn't get to go to that show, but most of my friends were all at it, and I think it really just changed them. Like I think it really affected the sound that bands started making too in town.
It's true.
Amongst with some peers too. It was super, super influential, and not to mention.
Do you remember when that was?
05?
Yeah,
that sounds about right. Yeah, a lot of those. I'd say a lot of those like Copenhagen and Swedish, like I don't know, I don't want to call them power pop bands, but like melodic punk bands, like definitely had an impact on a large part of the scenes. Like obviously there was other bands playing similar styles before that, especially in Portland, but it kind of just like pushed even more people into that.
Yeah, I feel like No Hope too is like the biggest of like all the Gorilla on Greb, Hole, and
well, Hole was I think Casper's band before No Hope for the Kids.
Yeah, Omdi Peterson's Army.
Peter's band. Yeah, they played at a skate park in Portland, which was a cool show. But
yeah, one of my favorite records that I was able to get when I was, I think I might have been when I was rooting for the Red Dawns. I found in a distro over there that double 7-inch Copenhagen.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was so hard to find, and like cost a pretty penny if you wanted to get it, and it's really well done. I think it was on Kick and Punch.
Yeah.
But yeah, in fact today I was re-alphabetizing my 7 inches for the first time in years, and ended up holding it in my hand and kind of like looking at it. Fond memories of the hours and hours I've listened to those bands, but I feel like No Hope was definitely like the most influential or far-reaching out of all of those
And
bands at the time.
that was one of those Jakob from Kick and Punch, or I guess he was doing it at the time, but he was distroing at a show that I'm guessing Remains played in the first Ungdom Shoe set, and was like, I would buy like hardcore records from him or Crust records to bring back home, and he had this No Hope for the Kids LP. I was like, what's this? He's like, you need this. It's like, you need this.
Really? There's a dude wearing a cowboy hat.
yeah. I was like, okay, sure. And it's like, oh yeah, this is great. This is like everything I grew up on, like adolescence type, like Southern California punk, but like just the production was different, and it just sounded more like the right time, like current, sounded more current. But
It's a special record.
yeah, it's really
Awesome.
good. Yeah.
And there's one record I'm still like, I don't buy records as much as I used to, but if I came across a copy of Secret Police, that
Oh yeah,
7-inch,
that's a good one.
I'd like
That
maybe-
song is like so catchy.
like
And
maybe their best song. It might be like kind of the way like Arrested is to Government Warning. It's kind of
Oh, I say that's definitely their best song.
yeah.
I mean, imagine seeing like 500 Danish punks all screaming these songs so loud you can't even hear the band, but
And
you're
you thought
just
you liked them.
yeah, you're like,
Yeah.
this is so cool.
Sounds like my kind of show.
Yeah,
That's awesome. Yeah, good
I
pick.
wish I was there, man.
yeah. I
It's
know,
a
right?
Great pick.
All right, Ian, what do you got?
All right. Number 3. So many Japanese bands come to the U.S.
Sweet.
and don't sound nearly as good as they do in Japan. Some definitely still deliver. The majority still deliver, but seeing a Japanese band in Japan with their insane sound systems and everything going for them in their hometown is something else. My number 3 pick is D-Clone from Nagoya, and seeing the show is them playing in Nagoya. It was the first show I ever saw in Japan, and I was just fucking blown away.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually really hoping you would bring up some of the Japanese bands, because they're like probably 5 to 10 on my list. So, but yeah, until you actually like see a band in a Japanese live house, you can't really like. There's not really a comparison. It's like seeing a band in an arena, but like with an arena sound system
It's
in
the
a basement.
The
And you're-
loudest shows I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's
I-
crazy. And
People always, like, oh, Motorhead's so loud. I saw Motorhead. Granted, I was like, maybe 100 feet away, but like it was nothing like seeing Contrast Attitude,
totally. I mean, you can
in
feel
a-
that as soon as it
playing
starts.
for 30
like,
people, and
Yeah,
they are just so fucking loud
yeah.
and so dialed in, and the sound is just so fucking intense. And D-Clone just so tight and well rehearsed, and playing the style of music that is supposed to be loud. and
Yeah.
it's supposed to like hurt you.
That's how I always like doing those tours with Age. You're like, holy shit, this band is so good. Or like seeing Disclose in Japan compared to seeing them in the States, or like, I mean, that you talk about D-Clone, like one of my like favorite Japanese show experiences is like seeing D-Clone, Clown, Reality Crisis, and Demolition.
Clown and Reality Crisis both played this show.
They're like a
as well.
Nagoya thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Demolition was the like, especially because I did a record for him and had to do this crazy like, secret underground bar meeting with the band and the label boss, and it was like super sketchy and kind of an interesting experience to like meet with the band about releasing a record in the US for them. But they ended up playing a show with us. Fuck, I can't even remember which band. It must have been with Hellshock. But the the singer, this like scary tall dude, Japanese dude, comes out like just wearing leather pants, no shirt, huge knife in his like a Bowie knife like strapped to his belt because they were all part of this like crazy motorcycle club. But
Clown too, right?
yeah, it's like Deadly Drive stuff. But comes out, first thing he does is throw all of the mic stands at the crowd, and like they start playing, and then like 5 minutes in, he grabs a monitor, chucks it out into the audience, and
Jesus.
like so they grab it, like bring it back, put it down, crowd goes crazy again. He grabs it again, throws it again, like swings it over his head, like launches it in the crowd, hits some dude in the head. Dude's head explodes, like blood everywhere. They drag him out, and then they grab the monitor, bring it back on the stage, and then he does it again. And the third time, they finally just take it away, and then they keep playing. But it's like super violent. I'm sure like those shows are super violent. Like
Clown, same thing. The guy walks out
with the ladder, right?
Yeah. Was that a story from me?
I mean, that was my experience with Clown.
No, this time he walked out with a baseball bat.
Oh shit!
Yeah, he walks right up to the microphone and just smashes the microphone off, like it's like he's playing fucking t-ball.
Yeah,
he just smashes the microphone and then just hucks the baseball bat as hard as he can into the crowd. Goes straight to the back of the room. I was back at the merch table with Jake. And like missed Jake's head by like 2 inches.
Damn. Yeah, there was the
Had you already played?
No.
Oh,
yeah,
that would have messed things up then.
You have to play last. You have to play after these bands,
Yeah,
and
I had to play after D-Clone this night.
Yeah.
And, all this being said, D-Clone was still the band. Reality Crisis, so fucking good.
They're good.
Too.
Yeah.
They're a band so good in Japan. Saw them in the U.S.
They feed off the energy, and the crowd feeds off the energy of the band.
And the really high quality sound.
It's true.
Like,
I will
so
give
important.
Age props for like bringing it every single time. Like I never saw them play bad. They played just as good in Japan as they did in the U.S. every single time.
Yeah, and
like,
D-Clone also played really well when we were touring with them in Tijuana, and they played on practice space amps, but it just didn't feel the same, It's not the playing; it's like they write this music and have this sound kind of based on volume, and when that can't happen, it sometimes suffers. But
yeah, I definitely seen my fair share of Japanese bands. They're like, oh man, you need 2 guitars to play these songs outside of Japan. Nobody can make you sound like that here. Like it sucks. Yeah. Like, oh yeah, back to the Clown thing. Like my experience with them, and I think it's both times that I played. He usually just chucks a ladder into the crowd, but that show they were all trying to one up each other. Like it started with, D-Clone kind of being crazy, and then Reality Crisis being even more crazy, where like half their members ended up with bloody faces. And then Clown playing where you're like, where's the singer? They're starting their songs. And then all of a sudden, this huge Japanese dude, because he probably weighs like 250, 300. No,
easy.
300 pounds probably.
Yeah.
Comes in with a
black makeup.
Yeah, a step ladder from the back of the crowd, like at a fully packed house, all the way to the stage, mowing down every single person in his way. And then chucking the ladder back in, and then Demolition playing after, and almost killing that dude.
I have seen them do that, but it wasn't that show. It wasn't the same show.
Right.
I've seen them with the ladder.
Like I feel like all the people that go to see those shows know that there's somebody's gonna get hurt. That guy who got hit in the head by the singer from Demolition with the monitor,
wrote an apology letter.
No, we went outside, and the ambulance was like wrapping gauze around his head, and we're getting ready to play, and the dude just like jumps out of the ambulance and runs into the venue. Like the venue was trying not to let him back in because the dude is like fucked, but he ended up sneaking back in and watching the rest of the show. But
this isn't my story to tell, but I did just hear it today. I was just talking to Jamie at the bar before I got here, talking about someone in Japan at a show going and just doing like a big stage dive and just completely missing the audience, smacking his head so loud that you can hear it over the band, getting knocked out completely. Crowd lifts him up, and they're crowd surfing him while he's completely passed out.
Oh, man.
And he never woke up.
He woke up. He woke up, and as soon as he could stand straight, went right to the stage and just started headbanging again.
Damn. Oh, and so more on some honorable mentions for some Japanese bands. I gotta say, like, I don't know if you ever played with Disturbed, but they're terrible name. One of the best live bands I've ever seen.
Disgust did play
and
this show.
They have this. They're from this like smaller mountain town called Tsuyama, same town as Schizophrenia, but they have this scene there where it's like,
Oh wait,
it's almost like a communal like
it's
music
like a ski
scene.
town. It feels like a ski town.
Yeah,
almost.
but they're like
It's not like a
they're
mountain with a little river.
but their venue is just like they have a venue that all of them run, and like my memory is like
Death
some of
Dust extractor from there.
yeah, they all share members. My memory is of them like having this house where a bunch of the punks like share and live together, but all of their shows are like just this small scene, similar to like Mie or something, or like Yokkaichi, but
much smaller town feeling.
it's very small, really like tight knit community, and the bands are amazing. Like they're so good. I mean, that's one of the bands. If I could get a band to come out and tour the U.S., it would be them, because they're also one of the only 3 pieces I've seen there that can just like destroy a room, even if it's like on a smaller Japanese sound system. Probably the best live Japanese band I can think of off the top of my head, aside from like them and Age, would be having seen Crow in Tokyo. That was like one of those things where like, you know, you're so excited to see this band that, you know, you've listened to for so long, and then see them and they sound exactly like the record. The singer was so wasted. He was like pounding like whiskey or something outside the venue at sound check, which is usually like 2 or 3 in the afternoon.
Sometimes 11 a.m.
Yeah, totally. And you're like, he's just standing there, not like, he looks super like menacing and mean, but he probably is just really wasted. But then as soon as they play, he's just like nuts, you know, like pulling people onto the stage from the crowd. And like, I think at one point he like fell over the amp and is still like singing, like trying to get up from behind this guitar amp. And like the whole rest of the band is like, the drummer for this show was like Iron Fist who was in Gizm for a while. And the guitar player is just shredding like that. That was like, you know, pretty epic show too.
And a cool thing with that Mie venue too is they have that smaller room where you get more of like, it feels like a living room show in America.
Totally.
Or something.
Yeah, that one, I mean,
I don't know if you've ever had to play there, but I have.
Yeah, for sure. I've definitely played like that at the venue you're talking about. Like, and that's kind of like all like Blackwater, like, you know, I try to take little bits and pieces of like other places that I've toured before, and like trying to get this massive sound system in this tiny space is like definitely like a dream to, you know, like obviously it's expensive as fuck, but ideally like we take these like the best parts of other touring experiences and try to bring them and make it so that space is better. And
well, Japan is definitely a place to look for inspiration.
Seriously, like what they can do with a small room is crazy, you know. That's your Declone's your third.
Declone.
Yeah.
Huck Finn.
Wait, yeah.
Kenton, shall we move on?
If you want. I mean, it sounds like we should have been talking about Japanese bands tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a broad one. I guess we could have narrowed it down a little bit.
Yeah. Well, yeah, my number 3 is it. Yeah. Okay. My number 3 is Jay Reatard. I was fortunate enough to get to see him on his first tour in 2007, shortly after that his LP came out, and I think he had like maybe the Night of Broken Glass EP had just come out around then. And this is another I was underage scenario, but nothing was going to stop me from seeing Jay Reatard on this tour. So I had my buddy Dan Stanton's fake ID. So it was a picture.
He's older than us?
He's older than us by a year or two, but he also has...
Oh, his fake.
He had a fake ID. So he had this, it was like an Iowa... Yeah, I think it was Iowa fake
Bullshit
ID
state.
with his picture with the worst, like terrible lit. He had like straight black hair parted, looked nothing like me, but I used it And the show was at Dante's, and they are like,
I saw that show.
They were
Yeah.
notorious for like, I think at that time you would still get money for confiscating fake IDs.
You did.
Yeah,
Yeah, you did. You would get, the OLCC would give you money.
yeah, like $10 or something,
Yeah.
whatever. So it was an incentive. So it was
Yeah.
like really, really hard to get into like well-established places like that.
And now they say don't do that, right?
They don't do
don't-
that.
I mean, you can get in trouble for taking someone's ID.
Yeah, they tell you not to take it.
Yeah, but
Don't
you know,
steal
I
from
think if someone takes a fake ID, you're like, call the cops. They'll come down and make sure it's you, like that kind of thing.
Yeah. And
Anyway.
I can
Yeah.
tell you that this ID had nearly been taken away from me on numerous occasions. But I always went for the classic, like, they'd be like, you got a second ID? I'm like, oh, yeah, sure. So as I'm looking down at my wallet, I grab it back from them. Like, you know what? I don't. They're like, let me see that again. No, I'm out.
See you later.
So anyhow, I bought a ticket for it, and I went with a couple friends. I think it was like Alex Tryon and Annika, and they were both of age. So I think like going in with a cluster, you do all the things you can to try to make it look less obvious that you're 18 years old or 19 years old. And I got in, and it was just epic. He'd play his music a lot faster,
So fast.
non-stop too.
So
Like
fast.
there's no breaks, there's no speech. It's just he just would blast through it.
I've seen the YouTube videos.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of those things I have a different experience because I thought it was like so fast that it made it not as good.
Sure.
But yeah.
I thought it was super high energy, and at that time, his backing band played another band that I really liked, and that was before like Stephen Pope went on to do like Waves and stuff like that. But the Hunches opened, which is one of my number one favorite Portland band, and so they got to open that show, and I was having such a great time going ape shit, but I'm a young person who's enthusiastic about music around a bunch of bar people who are just there because it's the fashionable thing to do.
Yeah.
And some people didn't like the way I was moving around, and some guy decided that he wanted to fuck with me. So like anytime I was within like an arm or an arm and a half length, he'd go out of his way to push me. And I have this 3 strikes rule. Where it's
Especially
like,
when you're
all
like
right, the first
18
time,
years old.
first time, maybe he was afraid that I'd fall into him or something like that. Second time, it's like, okay, all right, well, but
Here we go.
the third one was a reach. It was like he had to straight up take a step and a half to push me. And at that point, I turned around and I grabbed him and lifted him by his shoulders and walked him back to the bar and told him, if you got a problem, you need to stand over here. And as I am turning around, the next thing I know, I am being choked out. And I thought it was one of the dude's buddies. So like I'm throwing an elbow, and next thing I know, it's a mag light around my neck,
Uh-oh.
like being choked out. And I realized it's the security.
Those guys are pretty big.
Dante's security, no joke.
Yeah.
No joke. So I end up getting thrown out the side door after the guys take a couple swing at me and knee me. And I go right back up to the front door.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah, were you
Yeah.
there?
I remember you getting kicked out a couple times and going
Yeah.
back in.
So I
Yeah. Shit.
So I went back up to the front door and I demanded to be let back in. And the dude is like, what the fuck did you just say to me? The door guy up there. I'm like, I got kicked out for no fucking reason. You better let me back in. And this is just straight up like dumb luck me, but it's also just like I was willing it. I needed to be there. Nothing was going to stop me. And I knew the owner, Frank's son, Frank Jr., who was bartending that night, who was a buddy of mine. And so there's this commotion. So Frank happens to walk by. And I'm like, what's going on here? I'm like, you Frank? He's like, yeah. It's like, dude, this is so fucked. I'm buddies with your son. I get kicked out of this show for no reason. Some dude was harassing me. I walked him back politely and told him if he's got a problem, he needs to stand over here. Next thing I know, I'm being thrown out. You got to fucking do something about this. But he stepped in at the right moment because the door guy up front would just like, I came in so hot and he was pissed. He grabbed the bat from underneath
Oh, shit.
like the ticket counter. And like, that's when like Frank walked up to like whatever. And he's like, okay, well just wait over here. I'll see what I can figure out. And because they're ripping through the set so fast, it's like there's Sevi and Alex, or not Alex, he was inside, but it was like Sevi and Nick Powell and like other friends that were all watching from the door because they're all my age. And eventually he comes back out and he's like, okay, you can come back in, just don't go too far up to the stage because I haven't informed all security that you're back in yet. I'm like, okay, awesome. So I caught the last like 3 songs. Afterwards, I went and I talked to Stephen Pope for a second and was just chatting with him, told him what happened. And Jay walked by and he's like, dude, that's so fucked. I'm so sorry, man. It's like, oh, it's cool. I'm going to be heading down to the Bay Area to go see you while you guys are on the coast. He's like, really? He was like, why? I'm like, oh, just because I want to catch you while you're over here. He's like, oh, well, whatever. Let me throw you on the guest list. So he put me on the guest list for the Oakland show at the Stork Club, and then at the 12 Galaxies. And I had an email with him because I bought T-shirts from him and would buy stuff from his label and stuff. So there was like a correspondence there. But I text, he's like, hey, could you please put my fake ID name? Because they were both bars that he was playing at. Could you please put my fake ID on it? And of course, I get to the Stork Club and I see the guest list and Kenton McDonald's on there and not Daniel Glenn Corson Stanton. So in Oakland, the guy was cool. I don't think they had the restrictions as heavily down there. So I just showed him my actual ID with my under. He's like, all right. So I got into that one, but someone like threw a beer can at Jay and he threw like a tizzy fit and walked off stage prematurely. It was still an awesome show. And then the next night when I saw, and I was there with Brace Belden and he was a total blast. He was my partner in crime there. And we walked into this art gallery down the street that was like giving out free. He's like, oh, let's go in here. And it's like, everyone's dressed super nice. And it's like, are these wooden sculptures that are super phallic looking? And I'm like, he's like jerking. I was like, yeah, take a picture, like drinking the free wine and shit, just making a scene. That
dude's pretty funny.
Gotta get him for the podcast.
Oh God. Yeah. Yeah. And then the 12 Galaxies show, I lucked out because it was one guy checking IDs and another guy checking guest list. So I could,
cool.
So it wasn't an issue the third time around. But yeah, I was so pumped to see him on that tour. I love all that shit he put out up until that point, really. I mean, his later stuff's fine too, but like the 05 to 07 is like some of my favorite shit that's come out in my lifetime. So that
very good.
Very, very memorable shows for me.
Number two.
Moving right up.
Yeah. So my number 2 is going to be Bolt Thrower at Star Theater. And that's probably the best metal show I've seen ever. And I don't know. That's the best time I've seen Bolt Thrower. Like, Hellshock's been lucky enough to play with them a handful of times. Damn. We actually played the last show they ever played in Vancouver.
Whoa.
Which, unfortunately, like, the drummer passed, like, not too long after that. But the show at the Star Theater, I don't know, were you at that?
No.
The sound was amazing. Like, there was some experiences that happened with us playing that were unfortunate and that I was kind of bummed about, but as soon as they played, everything was like, oh, none of that shit matters. This is like one of the best, one of my favorite bands of all time, and sounded perfect. Like, everyone was going crazy. Like, that was like a really good setting for them to play. And maybe all the stuff that would happen that was leading up to them playing that sucked, like, made their set better, because you're just like, fuck it.
Relieved.
Yeah. But that was incredible, Not really a whole lot to say about that one, I mean, I guess we could say, like, the other times I saw them, they were really great too, but just not nearly as good as that one,
Love the band, love the set.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, the last record they did was it came out same time as that Hosanna's Killing Joke record, and those 2 records I was listening to nonstop for, still, they're still on my record player right now. But
yeah, you have 2 turntables set up, one with each record.
I do actually, yeah. And those are the only ones on there. Yeah. I don't know really what it was about that set, other than it was perfect. Like you know, like
That's all you need.
right? Like
You can't get better than that.
yeah, like everything was perfect. Like the sound was perfect. They played perfect. The set was perfect. Like it was just great, you know. Or like you talk like about bands like Motorhead, for example. It's like they're great every time. Like
Right.
I don't even know how many times I've seen them. But part of the reason I like watching them is because they're not perfect, you know. Like they'll fuck up sometimes, and it's that's cool. Motorhead fucked up. The drummer dropped the stick again, but they still fucking killed it, you know. Like whereas that bolt thrower set was just like perfect.
Awesome. Well, Ian, I guess we're moving on to your number 2 then.
Number 2, Annihilation Time. Chaos and Taos, 2009. The year Cockspar, Amoebic.
Oh, that was a good one.
Skit Kids.
Hellshock.
Hellshock. Career Suicide. Pierce Darrows. A huge year. But anyway.
Oh wait, that might have been Warcry actually. That was a Warcry. Sorry, that was Warcry and AI.
Well, anyway,
Yeah.
the show I'm talking about was a daytime show at a pizza shop.
Oh, cool.
Because, you know, as great as it is to see such amazing bands, you know, on a big stage, seeing a band like that in a pizza shop. I think it was their last show too. The last they've done shows since.
Mm-hmm.
But it was summer in Austin, you know, probably
Hot
fucking
as shit.
95
Yeah.
degrees in
the shade.
Yeah. No air conditioning, some shitty fan, but they just fucking ripped it. And I had seen them the night before on the big stage, or maybe 2 nights before.
You didn't get the invite to the secret boat show?
I was not there.
Yeah, you had to be punk rock royalty to be there, apparently.
I was at some of those.
Of course you were there.
Yeah, you're the mayor.
I got a really funny story about that, but we'll save that for another time. I don't want to get people mad at me. But
Yeah, this was just at a pizza shop. No boat.
That's exactly where a band like that needs to
Totally.
be seen.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm sure I'm sure
Jimmy-
it was jumping off of the walls or something like that.
Oh, shit was going crazy. There was a life size, I don't know how big the actual Pokemon is, but talking about the biggest Pokemon I know, Snorlax.
Oh, that's the biggest one. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was like a human-sized Snorlax that was like thrown at the fan, and the fan, you know, tore the shit out of it. And then so it's just the insides of Snorlax all over the crowd, beer going everywhere, as is the case with every great hardcore show.
Totally.
Just the best band in the best setting.
Wouldn't happen in a Minor Threat show. Only because there is no Minor Threat show.
Annihilation Time still, I think, some of my absolute favorite records of the 2000s. I love that band, and seeing them is fucking remarkable.
Yeah, they're definitely great every time I seen them.
That's awesome, yeah. They're a great band.
Yeah.
So great, in fact, I'm going to get into my number 2, which is Annihilation Time.
All right.
Damn.
Shit, all right, we got some crossover.
You guys said that wouldn't happen.
Well, the odds were
Different
low.
show, I can guarantee you. We're not in
100%.
Austin, Texas.
But you know what you've got me thinking is the one that I wanted to bring up was I saw them in San Francisco at the Parkside play Peligro Social's last show with Second Opinion, and it was, to me, it was like seeing them in their home turf at a sold-out show. I've never seen a circle pit that big in a building. I saw some guy with the most busted ankle I have ever seen. Like the bone might have been sticking out. I don't even fucking know. It was gnarly. But they just brought it so hard. And like, you know, they're like the hometown heroes. So like, of course it's going to be like it's the same as seeing like No Hope for the Kids in their home. You know what I mean? It's like,
okay. Only other one up I got on my show was they were announcing it was their last show, and they covered Black Sabbath "Never Say Die," and that was the pinnacle of the show.
That's epic. Yeah. No doubt. But you made me want to switch to when I saw them at Mississippi Pizza because you're talking about seeing them at a pizza shop. And then I realized that after the fact, I was like, oh, wow. I said, that's a band you got to see in a pizza shop, or whatever the comments I made. And then I realized I had seen them at a pizza shop, and it was wild there too, because they have the cement, like the concrete floors at Mississippi Pizza. And of course there are people throwing around their beers, but they're in glass pint glasses. So
damn.
you can imagine the high stakes moshing that I was doing at this moment.
And Keith is just imagining the cleanup afterwards.
Well, it's not my place. So yeah, always cool if it's somewhere else.
Yeah, oh yeah, not my house.
Yeah.
Annihilation Time is great. I think I only got to see them 3 times. They didn't play at the Ash Street House, did they? I think
you know what? I think they did.
Did they play there? Or did they play at the Cook Street
Holy
House?
shit! Yeah, no, they played 12th and Ash. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, that was another great time. That was the first time I saw them.
Yeah, those were good shows. Tiny ass living room, but
I love those shows
always
there.
crazy.
That was awesome.
Fuck, I forgot about that. Yeah, the last 2 times I can remember seeing them. Actually, one of the last times was on my honorable mention for another band when like Hellshock, Annihilation Time, and Meebix played, but obviously didn't make the cut. But it must have been their first tour. I think they played the Ranch even, but I couldn't, like, I want to say Hellshock played that one too, but the Ranch is small, and I think I missed the show because if you're not in there when it starts, you're not getting in. So
Totally. I missed that dank old basement.
yeah, but yeah, 12th and Ash. Yeah, dude, I didn't even think of about any of those shows on this. Like 18th and Burnside and 12th and Ash shows, like. You know?
Oh man, some of those 18th and Burnside shows, those were awesome too.
Oh yeah, I meant to bring up when I was talking about Declone when they played 18th and Burnside, and you.
That's the last time I ever stage dove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's no stage. But
Well, I
you
jumped
dove
off my
something.
I jumped off my PA, like crowd surfed for all of 5 seconds. Someone dropped my shoulders, lifted my feet, pile drived right into the ground. Thought I broke my neck. Never did it again.
R.I.P. Keith.
Well, we got you a chair with wheels, so at least you're mobile.
Yeah.
No, but one
that was
thought,
a good show.
I loved watching you do that. That was special.
I want to bring this up as well since you're here, Keith, because the first time we'd ever spent any amount of time together, because I'm a handful of years younger than you, you were filling in on drums for Absolute Rulers on a tour that I roadied for, and I turned 18 on that tour, and that we stayed at the Annihilation Time. Or no, we didn't stay at the Annihilation House. We went to the Annihilation Time house from this warehouse we were staying at in Oakland that night, and that was the first time I met any of those guys. I'd never heard of the band before, and then Ryan Miller was talking to, I think it was Graham, and was talking to him about it, and then Graham gave him a copy of Annihilation Time 2, and that was my first exposure to any of that.
Yeah, that was an interesting tour. I only remember parts of it, but I do remember that. Yeah, I remember Oakland for sure.
Yeah, it's still there.
I think I learned those
And so
songs
was
in a week or something. Did the tour, then that was it. You know.
Yeah,
I don't even remember how that happened. I think Fred and Ryan just talked me into it. And I was like, sure, why? I got a week off. Let's do it.
Well, I'm glad it happened. I mean, that's where, like, on that tour in particular, that's where I was like in the peak of collecting all my Jay Reatard shit. I was like trying to pick up all the Angry Angle 7-inch Final Solution stuff, like every band he was a part of. It was like every record store in California that we hit. It was like I came back with a bunch of that stuff, which I still have majority of to this day.
Yeah, that's cool. That was back when I was more inclined to do stuff like that, or now I don't think I have time even if I wanted to.
We were all younger back then, you know. I like I said, I think I turned 18 on that. I turned 18 at the Campbell Street House when you guys played with War Crime.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Wait, so what year was that?
I turned 18 and I turn 31 or 33 in a couple days. So
2006.
15 years ago.
Okay, cool.
Is that right?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, my first exposure to Annihilation Time happened with you.
Sweet.
And they are my
you're
number
welcome.
2.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be here talking about Annihilation Time if it wasn't for you. Safe to say.
And now we're here.
Now we're here.
We're now at your
Number one. Number one.
The greatest set you've ever seen
Oh
in your
man.
entire
See, you
life.
can't say it like that because
This is the end all be all of the episode.
And this has to go back to like why you go to shows or like the feelings you get when you see certain bands, and not 100% not because the band was the greatest band you've ever seen, or they played the tightest set you've ever seen, but just the experience in general. And mine would have to be Dead Moon.
Hell yeah.
And just, I mean, I've seen them a lot of times. It was kind of hard for me to pick like a specific show, but I do have one because they never played all ages shows, like never played all ages shows. Most of their shows were around like, you know, solstice or bar holidays or, you know, drinking stuff. Like, you know, they played a lot of small bars.
Mm-hmm.
And they could get away with playing a lot of small bars back then because they had a cult, you know, they have a cult following until they really stopped playing, or like right towards the end, they didn't really like they couldn't sell out. I mean, they probably could have, they wanted to, but they didn't play huge venues. So it was always like intimate experiences and getting to like see this like people that just played with each other and just like were super sincere and genuine about like why they were playing and like how much they, you know, I don't know, they just were awesome. But they did play one all ages show, and the person that I was dating at the time, which for some reason there's a lot of these shows that I had good experiences that involved that specific relationship or the beginning of it, but she was obsessed with them, like really obsessed with them. And when they played an all ages show, like I think her excitement kind of rubbed off on me. And then I think it was the Meow Meow. Maybe it used to be called Stage 4, but it was this kind of shitty, like, I want to say they came out as being kind of a Christian venue, which was unfortunate, but at the time you didn't really think about that. But they played, and watching like their sincerity kind of like infect a lot of these younger kids that really didn't have those kind of experiences with like seeing bands play was inspiring, you know? Like you see shows like that and they kind of like reset you for the next like 5 to 10 years, you know? It's like, okay, this is why I'm doing this. Like, or I want to do that. I want to play shows where like that's the feeling I get from playing, or I want to watch bands that have those kind of effect on the crowd and vice versa. And they were by no means the tightest band in the world. They were very, very sloppy, but they were really awesome to watch.
Well, that's
You know?
that's kind of, you're really touching on what Johnny was talking about.
And I love so much that you picked them as your number one. I
Yeah.
never would have guessed it, but respect the hell out of it.
I mean, it just comes to why do we go to shows, you know? Like everyone's got their own reason, and mine's, you know, like you go to feel stuff or like go to experience stuff with your friends and the people that you care about, and they're the ultimate in that band.
And
you
on
know?
Johnny's episode, I said they were one of the bands I regret missing, like top 5 bands I wish I got to see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Easily.
and he was also talking about a very similar experience, like that people like were brought to on the verge of tears at some of these experiences, you know?
Yeah, like you tour like Europe, for example, and are like, oh, you're from Portland? That's where Dead Moon's from. They're like, oh yeah, they play here all the time. It's like, they're like, I never realized how iconic or like how big of a band they were. Like they had Dead type following, you know?
Totally,
Or,
yeah.
And then, but they also do certain things that are like I really liked Andrew Loomis's drumming, like super solid, like just real simple, but like just kind of like all of them are just like kind of closing their eyes and feeling it. And like he would do this. I mean, they do the beginning of the show huddle where they're like kind of talk to each other, and like, you know, that already is kind of like inspiring to watch. You're like, oh, they're like a family. And then you're like, lights his candle. They're gonna play until the candle burns out. Or like at some point, like he'll pour beer on his floor tom, and every time he hits his floor tom, it's like splashing all over the place. And you're like, damn, this is like everything you ever wanted to like be in a band and like experience. And like it's all just this 3-piece of people that are just like a family and just extremely inspiring, you know?
And it also seems like a really, really hard thing to put into words, because I've
Yeah.
had so many people in my life try to explain it to me, and from all over, you know, like my Uncle Tony, you know, to you, Johnny, like people who are into completely different things.
Totally.
And it all comes back to like Dead Moon show. You had to fucking be there.
And
I don't think that I'll ever understand it. Like,
it sucks too because I feel like an asshole when it's like, oh, you had to see the band. It's like
No,
you
but-
can appreciate their records, but when you see them, you can appreciate them on a whole nother level.
right. Here we are though on a podcast just trying to talk about it. And
Right.
It's like I don't think that you can really put it into words. That's like what I'm taking away from it.
Yeah,
It's
I
like-
mean it's a level of sincerity and like that you just can't imitate. Like I've definitely seen my fair share of bands try to imitate it, and like I love Kelly and Pierce Arrows is cool, but they
Yeah.
don't even hold a candle to Dead
I
Moon.
think they played Cass and Tass that same year too.
Yeah, I mean it and they're great, but they just it's not even on the same level.
And I even tonight I thought about putting like watching Fred and Tootie play together on Valentine's Day one year at Mississippi Studios, where they actually made me cry. Just
Yeah, I
watching
mean, you
the
like-
two of them together
Exactly.
is special enough.
Like you're
And that-
watching something else happen that you're like, what
and
the
that's
fuck?
only 2/3
you
of
know?
it, and without the drummer and without like the
Yeah.
energy, it's like a just a tiny piece of it is still fucking moving.
Yeah, I mean, like you can put the fact that I can even think about putting like Dead Moon, like a 3-piece, like really simple rock band on the same level as like a Iron Maiden or Bolt Thrower or any number of other bands that are just like extremely intense without even like thinking twice about it, like they were easy number one,
Cool.
Like-
I love that.
Yeah.
Really, really happy you picked them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just furthering my regret for not actually seeing them ever. And a lot of it has to do with what you're saying. Is like when I was first introduced to them, I was underage, and they predominantly would play bars.
I almost want to say that might have been the only all ages show they ever played. Like I don't think they had any interest in it. Like I'm not really sure what the catalyst was behind them playing that one, but
It's probably just the scene too. Probably gave them a better deal. I'm sure there's a lot of incentives, drink tickets or whatever. You know what I mean? It's
they
like-
might have had enough kids that were like, "Can you please play an all ages show?" We're like, "We'll play one," and that was it. And it was actually like amazing, like a different experience because everyone wasn't trashed. But,
Well, I know they did one. One of the last ones, the one that was at
the Crystal,
the Crystal.
right.
But I think it sold out. Mickle was in town for that as well. And
Yeah, that was a good show. I think it's a little bit different because they were in a large setting. I mean,
Mhm.
you still get that experience, but
same thing. Like my older sister Colleen talks about like similar thing where like the first time she saw Dead Moon, she has a very vivid and precise memory of her experience of her walking downstairs at La Luna or whatever, and
oh yeah,
like seeing the black wax dripping off the candle down the amplifier. Like, it's like it's sears itself into people's minds who
Oh, yeah.
did get to experience
and
it.
that where the candle was like, you see layers and layers of like other candles that had melted onto there. Like that's
I'm picturing it in a like Jack Daniels bottle. Is that right?
yeah. I want to say it was probably different at different points in time, but it was in something on his kick drum, and a Jack Daniels bottle does kind of sound right,
I don't know. I didn't get to see it, unfortunately. But
Talk about bands like mimicking that stuff, but watching them play and seeing like a 3-piece setup where the drummer is up front, which typically I don't like, but if you ever play in a 3-piece, it's so much room spread apart. So like the idea of the fact that he's playing at the front of the stage is like, oh, that's a fucking great idea to like bring everybody closer. I mean, that's exactly what the Estranged used to do because of them,
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want this, like, not only is there only 3 people on the stage, but now there's 20 feet between me and the closest person in the audience, and it made things way better. Like you could put the amps behind you, everybody played together. It was like, there's probably a million things that they did that were just like, why didn't I think of that? But yeah.
Fuck yeah, Dead Moon.
yeah, fuck yeah, great pick.
Well, your pick is also a nice segue into my number one. Just for the sake of talking about all ages venues, I'm talking about 242 Main, a staple in the Vermont punk scene. Opened in 1984 by then Mayor Bernie Sanders,
Whoa.
who was not a fan of rock music, but did lift a ban on performing rock music on public property. And in the 80s, Agnostic Front, Operation Ivy, Fugazi, Misfits all played there. And it was the longest running all ages venue in the country for years until 2016. And for me, it was my CBGBs, my Gilman, whatever. It was for Vermont. It was the place to be. And kind of funny, my pick is actually a cover band, a Halloween cover band. I had already seen Bad Brains when I was like 13. My dad took me. That was at Higher Ground, the original Higher Ground. But this was a Bad Brains cover band playing at 242. The name of the band was Three Hackneys and a Blackman. And funny because Alan Blackman was the only white guy in the band. But it was fucking amazing. Bad Brains were the world to me at that time. This was 2006, maybe 2007. And it just kind of epitomized my world and the scene at that time and everything I loved about seeing music. And the Three Hackneys, well, okay, let me say this first. Their encore was covers of the Detroit band Death. And to me at the time meant very little. It was like, oh, okay, you're playing your dad's band from the 70s, but a couple years later, 2009, this record actually came out. And
this is their kids band.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you talking about this a little bit. Yeah.
Bobby, Jules, and Urian are the son of the bass player and singer of Death. And that record is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And a cool thing to have the slightest bit of a connection to. But this Bad Brains cover set was, I'm putting it as my number one.
Better than the real thing, huh?
It probably was at that
Way
point.
better than the real
Yeah.
thing. I mean, he didn't do backflips, but everything else was perfect. And
That's awesome.
I'll never forget it. It shook my world. And I just really wanted to include some Vermont shit.
Well, you were living in Vermont then.
Yeah, I was a teenager.
So it's early on in your
Yeah,
live music experience.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I was racking my brain for, and the other bands that came to mind were, My Revenge, Death Pact, which is funny because I, for the last almost 15 years, have played with
Eric Hines.
and Calvin, who are in each
Both
of those
those, yeah.
bands.
Yeah.
I wanted something personal, and
That's awesome.
This was
yeah.
a personal experience for me.
Yeah, I was trying to think about stuff like early teenage stuff. Like my first show experiences were going to like the O or the X-Ray or Atomic Cafe, whatever it was called, at
That's
various points.
LA stuff.
No, this is Portland.
Portland,
This is
okay.
like this small, like, I don't even know what you want to call it, next to where the Paris Theater is, like next to where Another State of Mind used to be. It's kind of like the epicenter, like Another State of Mind and the O were like the epicenter of the underground scene at the time. So
Yeah, and Trace was like one of the owners, right?
yeah, he was at least a door guy. I remember seeing him there as a door guy, but he probably was one of the owners. But
Yeah.
that's pretty much where I cut my teeth as a teenager, going to shows in Portland,
Yeah.
You get out of high school or whatever.
Or you're still in high school.
No, I mean like for the day.
Okay.
Take a bus downtown, maybe meet some friends and like, let's see what's going on here. And, it doesn't matter. Most of the shows were awesome. Like, but I couldn't remember any specific ones.
I had to I was like texting friends today, like
Yeah.
that I was friends with when I was 15 years old. Like
what shows were good?
what were my favorite shows? What were the best
Yeah.
shows? Another one that Kevin Ruel brought up to me was My Revenge and Bones Brigade. Also at 242. Just, seeing people go insane for the first time at a show and being like, wow, I wish people would do that for my band.
Right.
We did play that show.
Yeah.
But, and yeah.
I mean, I saw Bymarks and Frenzy destroy quite a few basements and houses, and I guess various versions of Blackwaters, like
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's so much better when you're like 15, 16 years
Oh, yeah,
old.
yeah.
Like that's,
Yeah, you're kind of like in awe of some, what you're seeing at that time,
Yeah.
I feel
I
like
mean,
the
that's
older you get, it's kind of easier to get jaded and stuff, but when you're young, it's
or
like
watching it from the back of the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of thing is what attracts most people to the underground music scene, like, yeah, I mean, it's just the energy and the experience, and like you see stuff that is appealing,
Yeah, and I don't think there was ever like that one set where there was like a pivotal moment where I was like, okay, this is what I want to do with my life. This is gonna be my favorite thing forever.
Right.
But I was trying to, tap into that and find something from when I was at that super.
Impressionable age.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What you got?
Well, I'm actually kind of going to do the opposite from what you're doing here, because you're doing like the first really influential show, and I'm going to talk about the last one that I was just straight up
Crying.
not crying, but I was just so locked in and focused to everything. I was looking at every band member, and I was just no one, like, the crowd wasn't there. It was just me and the band. I was so locked in, and this is another moment where I was so ready to see this band. And I don't know if there's so much of a band as a person, but Kate LeBon. When I saw Kate LeBon in San Francisco play the Chapel on July 9th of 2019, I flew down and met with my good buddy Ross, who's also a big fan. And we went to go see Kate LeBon, and she was touring on her new album, Reward, which was like a little bit of a departure from her last few records, but like the progression of her music, I still like am really into. And I haven't seen a ton of bands live that like, because it's more in like the indie world of music. So, really talented musicians playing well thought out music, and like horns and xylophones and whatever the hell going on. And her whole aesthetic, like, she's really, really Bowie-esque to me. With each album she puts out, she has this kind of persona or outfit or aesthetic that she has, and I just became so fascinated with her. Like, it's probably the most obsessed I've been about any sort of music over the last handful of years. And the more I listen to it, I can kind of hear these various influences, and it's been a long time since I've listened to music like that. When you're young and you only have so many other bands of point of reference to compare other bands to, it's really easy to whatever. But as my music knowledge has grown over the years, I don't typically think about music in that way, aside from the obvious, like, oh, this is a rip-off band of blah, 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 or whatever. But with her music, I really find myself thinking about different elements of what she's doing and how it relates to various different genres over over the last few decades and what she's pulling from. But yeah, this show was great, and the aesthetic to her, she's wearing this, she'd bleached her hair and had it like slicked back, and was wearing this blue dress that looks black because all the lighting was just red. So there was something about the atmosphere, but I just was like, I couldn't take my eyes off of them for a second. Like if I had to go to the bathroom, I would have easily just pissed my pants to like not leave where I was standing. And yeah, and I was really fortunate enough to be down there in a city that's not my town, so I don't have that camaraderie of walking into a show and like running into people that I know. So it was nice to be there with a friend who's also a big fan. And it's the only time I've seen a band play an entire album in sequential order, with only one break where she played 3 older songs, but she played the whole new album start to finish. And I've never seen that before. And I was so pumped. So pumped, in fact, that I got on an airplane, flew back home, and saw her again at the Doug Fir. And then the following day, I drove up to Seattle to go see her at the Crocodile. Every show was as good as the first, but the first show is still the first show. So for that, it's like the one that stands out the most to me. She's amazing. I love her. She's a huge reason why I started the podcast. I'm hoping that if I learn how to do a good podcast, maybe I can get her on a podcast of mine in the future. So she is the catalyst behind this entire show. That's why I had to bring her up.
I'll have to check it out. I've never actually heard her before.
I recommend it. Even if it's not your thing, I think it's definitely worth checking out. I think you can pretty much listen to almost anything if you have like the open mindset to do it. There's a million bands that I've got into way after the fact. I have to wait till hype dies down or till I have like a fresh set of ears to like really take it in. But like as far as punk is concerned, like maybe like The Fall, Bowie, Perubu. I guess I'm thinking about all the bands that have like horns and an odder sounding or more angular sounding music to it.
Yeah.
And she has a couple other projects as well, but that show was really, really special.
Cool.
That's my number 1. Do we have some honorable mentions to talk about?
Yeah, I got a few. Yeah. So, I mean, it's part of my 20 narrowed down to 5 list.
The laundry list
Roughly
here?
15 honorable mentions.
Yeah. I'm going to go, originally was like one of the first bands that I was like, oh, that's got to be on my top 5. But Warcry had played this show in Antwerp with Negative Approach. And that show was already kind of incredible. It was like Discharge, Christ on Parade, Warcry, Negative Approach, 1,000 person venue. We all had our dressing rooms next to each other, which was kind of funny. But this was the first, I want to say it was the first reunion for Negative Approach. So like they hadn't played before this. I think it was like either the guitar player or bass player. One of them was from the Meatmen, the other was from the Necros, and it was the original drummer, which didn't really play with them after like the first batch of shows. And
was it the same lineup that Biomarks played with?
not in Portland, no.
No, okay.
No. And I mean, they're good in Portland, but again, not even close. Like
You thought you liked them?
I didn't know what to expect. Like, like they were one of the most intense hardcore bands I've ever seen in my life. Like, the Portland show was great. Like they were intense. The dude had like the scowl that was like, holy shit, that dude looks like he wants to stab someone in the
like,
face.
It's not the right venue to see a hardcore band
Right.
in.
And this was like, like Belgium and Dutch hardcore kids jumping all over the place, and like literally 1,000 of them. Like you had to go under the entire venue, which was like a giant parking garage, to get from the dressing room to the back of the venue or to the back of the stage. And we were on the stage because it's the best spot, beats the hell out of being in the middle of like some crazy ass people trying to like punch each other and stuff. But the drummer's wife had flown out with their kids, so they were on the side of the stage watching this. They probably never even knew he was in this band or like not had this kind of experience, and they were so good, like so amazing. Like, the right amount of fog, like the dude, just the sound was great. Everyone was pissed off, like in the band, the drummer's this little tiny dude, but he hit the shit out of his drums. Like, it was so good.
No.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't think he played. I think after the couple of shows were like, okay, you did it. That was cool to watch. Like, then they got somebody else to play, or that's just my understanding, because it wasn't the same guy when they played in Portland. Yeah, and then that was like, again, the lineup was great. Like, Discharge weren't very good, but it was still cool to see them at the same show. And
You can say you saw him.
I've seen him a few times.
You
That
can
was
say
the
you've
best.
seen him
That
a
was
few
the best
times.
time I'd seen him. But
Okay.
It's like, I don't want to talk shit about man. Like, this is
Don't.
good. This is a good
Yeah.
set. So Negative Approach was great. The rest of the show was awesome. The War Cry set was something else. Like, we had a lot of bad luck. I think Terry broke 2 bass strings in the set, which she's never broken a bass string like outside of a practice before. So that was like already nerve wracking. But again, best sets. That was like one of the best hardcore set I've ever seen. So
It's awesome. I mean, they're kings of hardcore,
yeah, my expectations were super low too. So
And rightfully so. I think it's safer to go into seeing a classic band like that and not expecting the world out of them.
Especially hardcore. I mean, it's hard enough to pull off like a 70s punk sound when you're old as hell, but old guys playing hardcore.
I would say this. So Long Knife played with them at, where was that? Bossa Nova. And that was probably what I had expected to see them. They were good, but it was like, like I'd seen other hardcore bands, like Warcry played with the State. I don't know if you ever saw them, but on one of our first tours in the U.S., we played with them in Ann Arbor and in a living room. And that was like, oh, that's a fucking Michigan hardcore band from the 80s. And they fucking killed it and looked crazy. That was kind of like what I was expecting. But seeing them in a large arena, not expecting them to bring it like that,
They delivered.
More than delivered, yes.
Sweet.
And another one, I don't know if you want me to keep going with this.
Going, yeah.
Another one that should have made the list, but because there's only 5, is New Model Army. Seen them a handful of times. Estranged played with them a couple of times.
I know you're a huge fan.
Huge fan. One of my favorite bands. Like, they are one of those bands that I never thought I'd see. And they weren't allowed in the U.S. for a long time. So they had played they billed it as kind of like an acoustic set in Vancouver, BC. So me and my girlfriend at the time drove up to Vancouver to try to catch them in the Astoria, and it was amazing. Like, it was mostly acoustic, but they still had a drummer, but it was less acoustic than I thought it was. But that's one of those bands, I've seen him like 4 times. Every single time it's like, that dude sucks you in to the music, and the experience is like kind of what you were saying, Kenton, where it's like, it's just you and the band, and you're just like watching the intensity of these people. Like, and really it's just the singer, like Justin Sullivan. Like, dude is intense. Like, I would say him and Jazz Coldman and John Brannon are probably the 3 most intense front people I've ever seen. Like, just gives you chills, and it's very inspiring. But that was the first time I'd seen him, so I'd say that's probably the best. Although I would, you could argue, because they had a full band the other 4 times, like, those were also.
You like the drums.
I love the drums. And the drummer's killer. Like, they're all fucking good.
This band deserved a place on my top 5, I think, but for whatever reason, they eluded me at the time. But the first time I saw Merchandise play in 2013, it was right after their album Children of Desire came out, and I knew them a little bit. My only reason I was checking them out was because the guitar player also played guitar in one of my favorite hardcore bands, The Cult Ritual from Tampa, and Merchandise kind of doing something a little bit different. And I got to see them before. I think they started with a drummer, but then they ended up going drum machine. And they played at Laughing Horse Books, and I didn't really know what to expect. I'd heard their first LP and a couple of the 7 inches, and it was kind of something that I wasn't really like, I don't even know really what to describe it as, except for 90s alternative-ish influence stuff with people say that the singer sounds like Morrissey at times. So maybe that's what drew me in. I don't know. But I went to go see them, and that show was so cool. As far as like, I was talking about Kate LeBon and the mood that was set and like the tone just by the lighting and the aesthetic. This was kind of similar where the singer, I believe his name is Carson, he had brought 3 lights, like a red, blue, and yellow light. And periodically through the set, he'd turn one off and turn another one on. So he was manually changing the lighting, which would then change the mood in the room entirely while playing. It's such a weird thing to say is super influential, but it was like, it really changed how I was perceiving everything. You know, when you go to a show and you think about lighting, there's a guy doing it, cueing it, and, you know, whatever. But to have someone who is the focal point of a band manually going up and purposely changing the whole atmosphere, I feel like that was like really powerful in a way. And that album, Children of Desire, is, you know, still might be my favorite. I think the song Time off of that could be a top 5 songs of all time for me. It's an incredible song. But yeah, seeing them, that was merchandise. That was awesome. I saw Iggy Pop at the Pabst Fest. I don't like big shows or outdoor shows, open air stuff or whatever festivals, but his set was killer. He was awesome, and he played Sick of You. And
Rare cut.
Yeah, it is a rare cut, but it was on Nude and Rude, which was the first, which is the best of Iggy CD. That's the first I ever owned. And so seeing him play that, and I saw him the year before for the first time, and it was the most surreal experience seeing someone that I'd like idolized and been so into for so long, and then seeing him in the flesh, you know, the flesh actually hanging off of his body, and was just like, oh my God, dude, this guy's, how is he here? This is unbelievable. But then seeing him at that show, I think the set was just as good, if not better. So wanted to mention that.
I will bring up Keith. I think Libet and Toten has been my favorite Portland band to see for the last 10 plus years.
Damn.
Every time you fucking deliver, and it's amazing. I love it.
Thanks.
Probably the most memorable set to me would be, I have no idea when it was, but it was at the No. I remember being right up front and being like pushed up so far, and then, you know, have like one knee on the stage and then like kind of do a backflip into into the crowd, and then just like end up right back
up front,
where I was, you know, like.
Yeah, they're fun shows. I mean,
you guys play in a packed room is the perfect show.
Totally. Even a huge place like Branks, which you were talking about earlier, but when you played with Limpress there,
those shows are always good.
I love that show.
When Frank walked out with those pieces of like dry ice,
ice.
That's another thing. Maybe it's just like I'm really into like ambiance or atmosphere, but there is something about when he just brings the dry ice out and then suddenly it's all happening.
That was fun. Like, rubber gloves, dry ice in a bucket of water. You know, we get about like, you know,
trash can, no?
I don't know what it was.
Some kind of bucket thing.
Some sort of receptacle.
Yeah, I mean, I think we got like 2 minutes in before it burned up, but yeah, that shit's fun.
It was still
every time we play with Limp Wrist, like they're so good. Like those shows are fun. Like, I mean, I don't know how many times we played with them, maybe like 6 times or more, but yeah.
Yeah, you played the Below Zero show with them, yeah? Or
I mean, at least
with
3.
The dry ice?
No. No, I mean, I think in Portland, maybe 3 shows together, 4. We did 2 in Brooklyn like a couple years ago, and I want to say at least one in the Bay.
Con with them, but the thing is, with Limp Wrist, I'd been to 3 Portland shows and never saw them.
Oh shit!
One time I had to go, the one at Below Zero, I had to leave and catch the bus because I had school in the morning.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to see him then. The time at Satyricon, the person I was hanging out with, she got really drunk, and I had to hang out with her outside. So missed him again. And it wasn't until the only time I've been at 3 or 4 Limp Wrist shows, but the only time I got to see him was the one at Branks.
They're one of the best.
Yeah, and those shows in general, like, I feel like no matter where we play, there's no like they're good because there's no, I don't know what it is. There's no like posturing. Like people are just there in themselves and like they have fun and the show's good and you know
And
it's a
they're
good
just
atmosphere.
So high energy. I mean,
Yeah.
and such a good band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many local bands. I mean, you guys could probably do like 10 of these episodes on like what's your favorite like
They don't got to mention every single good show you've ever seen. But
yeah, I mean, I feel really privileged that so many good bands are from Portland, and I've done sound for, I've played the bar, I've gone to house shows, or lucky to be in Portland for sure. One of my honorable mentions would be seeing PI in Seattle when I was a teenager at the Rock Candy with, you know, Slayer playing drums and Pig and like, you know, classic lineup. That show was especially good because Accused played and MDC, and they were both really like top level at the time.
But this was in Seattle.
This was in Seattle, yeah. But
Huh.
PI, like every time I'd seen him,
But it just sounds like a Portland show.
exactly,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I wanted to segue because one of my honorable mentions was actually when I saw Poison Idea play with Forward in the basement of Grand Central Bowling
yeah.
Alley.
Yeah.
I was
The
drinking.
Champions' last ever all ages show.
Was it?
It very
Damn.
well could have been. It was the second time I saw them play. I saw them the first time I saw them play at the Paris with like Say Donation, and
Oh yeah.
and then I saw them play that show, and I was drinking a bunch of Mad Dog in a basement. I felt pretty cool.
Yeah, they're so great. Like back then, like so powerful. I mean, they had a period where they weren't so hot, but then they started getting better again. But yeah, always good to see that band.
Totally.
And another Northwest band that made my honorable mention list was the Sonics.
Oh yeah.
So I
drove them,
I
right?
got to drive them on that whatever you want to call it reunion tour. But when they played Portland, my dad came to the show, and I mean, I think I've been to one show with my dad outside of like, you know, touring through LA and be like, you want to jump in the van and see my band play that you probably won't like? And he'd be like, sure. Like I saw Ray Charles and Willie Nelson with him when I was younger.
Nice.
But this was like, I would say the first show that wasn't like a mainstream band with him, and he's like, I don't know who that is, but sure, I'll go see him. And then as they're playing, him realizing he knows all these songs because they're all classic songs, and they were great, you know, like they ended up touring through again with like half of the original lineup, and I didn't even really go see them, but I heard it wasn't that great. But every show that they played was awesome, and the singer bass player guy from the Kingsmen, like we had shared some stories because they had done some stuff in the Jackpot building, like before it was Jackpot. I think that's where they recorded that first Louie thing.
Damn.
And the guitar player talking about his $80,000 guitar that he was just leaving in the van, and I didn't have locks on my van at the time, so I had to do like wrap chains around the doors and like use padlocks, like super sketchy shit. But they were good live. Yeah, it was an experience. I think especially because my dad was there, like. It was like cool to watch, and they all hung out with him. They're the same exact age. Like they were all in their 70s. I'm like, this is crazy.
Wow.
But that was a good one.
I saw the Smash Mouth and Third Eye Blind with my dad when I was 10 years old.
It's good to bond over music, isn't it?
Especially
Well,
those
he
guys.
didn't want to be there. He just brought me. But
Yeah, 3EB.
no, I wasn't even 10. I was 8. I was 8. Because it was right before I got glasses. Because then I said to my dad, said something about the singer of Third Eye Blind's afro, and it was like he didn't have an afro. He had a like shaved head, but it was just all like blurry to me. And I got glasses shortly after.
Yeah,
Third Eye Blind. Yeah.
my family wasn't into music really. I never got to go to concerts when I was a kid. It's kind of, maybe that's why I liked them so much when I was, you know,
Yeah, something
a
for
teenager.
yourself.
Yeah.
That's kind of it too. I mean, like, yeah, my first show, I mowed lawns all summer long to buy tickets for me and a chaperone to go see the Spice Girls. You know, you know what I
Sweet.
mean?
I bet it
Who's
was
the
good.
chaperone?
Oh, it was supposed to be my sister Colleen, but she ended up going on a trip to England with her friend. So her then boyfriend at the time, Chris Ryan.
And you had to pay him, or just his?
I bought the
ticket?
ticket,
Oh, okay.
but he took me and had the gas in the car and everything. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
he was doing her a solid. Did me a huge solid though. if I take him to do that gig. But I got to get into these two because I'm saving this for honorable mention because it's so obvious for me. And that's I saw Danzig.
Of course you did.
Well, I've seen him numerous times.
Who did he play with this time?
And I saw Morrissey.
Oh
not
my
at,
God.
Not at the same time, but
Ooh.
same year.
I don't know if you're allowed to say that.
So Danzig and Morrissey both put out their first album the year I was born, 1988. So in 2013, it was their unofficial 25th anniversary, and both times their set was so much better than any other time I've seen them. When I saw Danzig, he played 5 songs off of Danzig 1, 3 songs off of Danzig 2, 2 songs off of Danzig 3. He played 1 song off of Danzig 8, 1 song off of Danzig 9, and then he played 6 Misfits songs with Doyle. So that was pretty
crazy.
epic.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then when I saw Morrissey, he played only
1 song off of Morrissey 1.
Yeah.
2 songs off of Morrissey 4.
You remember,
pretty close.
You pretty much remember every single
1 song off of Morrissey 1, 2 songs off of Morrissey 2. A couple songs off of Morrissey 4, and then 5 Smith songs, and only 5 newer stuff from the 2000s on. So both were really, really excellent shows. The Morrissey one was the only time I've been okay with going to a show that was at Arlene Schnitzel Hall, so it had like seating,
Right.
which is not my preferred way of seeing a show. But that aside, it was like the set list was killer, so I got to give it to him. So that's it. That's all I have to say.
I hope they take it. We've all seen plenty of great shows.
Yeah.
Keith, thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is a blast.
Yeah,
I
a lot of fun.
really
Yeah.
enjoyed the topic. So
Cool.
I think it's the most I've ever heard you talk.
It's probably the most I've talked in one sitting in my life. Yes.
You like live music, I like live music. Don't you like live music, baby? This is not an original melody, rickety-ticky-tacky, but I like live music, baby.
this has been a Top 5 production produced by Kenton McDonald. Our theme song was by Ian Howe. Our logo artwork is from Andrew Colgan at Studio AYC. Edited by Kenton McDonald with editing assistance from Ian Howe. And a very big thank you to Andrew Bassett for today's outro music. And if you'd like to request a criteria, you can email us at podcast.topfive@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.